Getting ready for a flight test can be an extremely stressful time for any pilot. The theory preparation, the flight training, reaching the standard, it's all hard work and commitment to try and achieve the goal. But what exactly is a flight examiner looking for? How do we conduct the assessments? Against what standard? What constitutes a fail? And what happens next? Well, I'm going to discuss all this and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Star 9000, 1013, Kilo 25. Coordinating aileron and rudder, bank balance, bank pressure rolling to 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. Runway 29, 1231.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 110 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. From Owenpelly to Orange, Oodnadatta to Oakey and everywhere in between, this is the podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. How you going? I'm your host, Trent Robinson, and welcome to another great episode. Firstly, thank you to everyone who sent on their beautiful messages and congratulations on my Instructor of the Year award. Just fantastic to hear from you all. Some people I haven't heard from in a long time, but I know you're all out there in the background, so I was totally blown away by that. Thank you, and some of your phone calls. Really appreciate it. There should be, I believe, a presentation or something happening in the next few weeks or so. And as I said, published in the March-April edition of Australian Flying Magazine. So something to look forward to. At some point, each of us will need to undergo a flight test, such as the proficiency check I'm preparing for this upcoming weekend. Flight tests can be nerve-wracking for some, especially those facing their initial assessment. However, for some individuals, the anxiety never diminishes. Much of this stress stems from the anticipation leading up to the test. After investing considerable effort, time and money into the training, it's only natural to feel a significant amount of pressure and build-up. Additionally, the unknown elements add to the stress, facing an unfamiliar examiner, uncertainty about the test content, and perhaps hearing rumours about the examiner can trigger high anxiety. Terminator Trent. No, it's not true. So while I can't speak for every examiner, I can assure you that we are here to support you. We have all been where you were. We've experienced the challenges you're facing, and like myself, many examiners continue to undergo proficiency checks and flight tests annually. So in this discussion, I aim to shed light on the process of becoming an examiner, the training and retraining we undergo, and the standards we adhere to, and their origins. So this ensures that us as examiners, regardless of who you get, can expect a similar, if not identical, outcome promoting fairness across the board, no matter what training school you've gone through and where in Australia you're located. All right, so the training process. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole thing because it's not really relevant to 99% of you. But in short, an instructor wants to become an examiner. So you can't become an examiner unless you've got some sort of check and training background or instructional background. And that's all changed recently with the Part 61 changes. So when they want to do that, they will need to complete a flight examiner course for the applicable testing approval that they're seeking. So historically, you'd normally start out RPL, PPL, work your way through from there. But that's only really for grade 3 to 1 instructor applicants. So now, as all operations require their trainers to hold instructor rating of some sort, an examiner can start pretty much anywhere that fits into their field of training and testing, as long as they have the applicable training delivery experience. And that only makes sense for someone to be an examiner. If they're in an airline environment, they want to be able to do type rating training endorsements. They've got no interest in doing PPL flight tests at all. All right, so they need to be experienced with that training delivery in that type of assessment before they test it themselves. So once an application is made and approved by CASA, they complete training in the form of a online course, professional development program, taking them through the whole process, face-to-face or webinar assessment with CASA, and going through a work booklet and forming exam test questions and going through the flight test form and how to conduct a test and all that sort of stuff. Once that's done, then they'll get together with a mentor and they will start witnessing and then conducting actual real flight tests under supervision with real life students. Some of you listening may have already been in this situation and completed a flight test under these conditions with an examiner applicant and their mentor sitting in the back seat. This is an incredibly important contribution that you're making to the industry and to that examiner's progress. There is no other way to do this. So if you guys don't agree and allow us to do these things, then we're not going to have examiners available to give you licenses and ratings. So to everyone that has done that, just a little personal thank you, because it can add extra stress, although we do every single thing we can to stop the additional stress. We're there in the back seat to watch the examiner. The examiner's there to watch you. So once that's all done, they complete a flight test for CASA, hopefully pass, and then become a flight examiner. So if you are interested in becoming an examiner, you need to look up the 61 FER application form, fill all that in, find a mentor, and on the CASA website are a bunch of dates for the PDPs and things when you need to complete the online course modules. And I'll put a link to that in the episode description so you can find it if you don't know about it already. All right. So that's enough about the examiner bit. But I do want you to understand that a lot of time and effort goes into creating an examiner. It's not just something we just start doing. So the next thing then is that standardization, like I said. So a crucial part is making sure that we're all testing the same way, viewing things the same way, and testing against a common standard so that it's as fair as it possibly can across the board. So the guide we use to help us achieve this is the Flight Examiner Handbook, or as we call it, the FEH. Right. So this is a book available online. It's on the CASA website. Any one of you can download it. It's not like it's a secret test guidebook. There's nothing that gives anything away. And if an examiner is doing their job properly, we pretty much use it and read it out to you and follow the whole process as we're going when we conduct a flight test. So you're more than welcome to do it. And I actually strongly suggest that if you're an instructor, you should 100% have a copy. And if you're a student, feel free to look at it. But for an instructor, this is what you're testing or training your student to be ready for a flight test. So if you don't know what I'm looking for in an examiner, how are you going to be able to prepare your student appropriately? All right. So once you get into the FEH, that will take us through how to conduct a test. And there's a whole heap of information in there that's really good to read. Now, as a student and an instructor, most of you will be familiar with the Manual Standards Schedule 8. And if you have a bit of a brain fart and can't remember what that is, then in the back in Schedule 8, and if you're looking at this online, you want to go to Volume 4 of the MOS, click on that and just scroll right to the end, and Table 1 and 2 are there. And Table 1 and 2 show us the aeroplane general flight tolerances for both the private and the professional levels. So when you're doing your flight training and you're getting all your 3s and 2s and 1s and things, this is basically what you're working towards in the syllabus and the standards that are required. As part of that process, you would have been notified of certain flight tolerances that you had to perform or meet. And these came into the form of like height holding. So you have to maintain altitude within plus or minus 150 feet, or a nominated heading within 5 to 10 degrees, touchdown within 120 meters of the touchdown point, all that sort of stuff. All right. So you would have seen that in your briefings and performance criteria. And this is what we need you to do on the flight test. So if you're going up and down like a yo-yo and going 200-300 feet up and 200-300 feet down, well, then you're clearly outside those tolerances, and that would constitute a fail. All right. Now I'm going to get onto failure a little bit more in detail, but just to set the scene. So that's going to be an example. Now, that is not just it. So as long as you go up and down, but stay plus or minus 150 feet or within 150 feet, you're inside the tolerances. Does that mean you pass? Well, unfortunately, potentially no. There's more to it. And again, this is where we go back to the Flight Examiner Handbook. Now, in the Flight Examiner Handbook, every chapter through from 5 through to about 36, it's basically every single flight test that exists. But each section is virtually, the majority of it is repeated because the conduct of the test is all the same. All right. But it's going to go into a subsection there, section 4.1, and that's about assessment of the applicant's performance, which states that examiners should consider both technique and tolerances when making assessments. All right. So it's not just the staying within 150 feet that we're looking for. It's how are you staying within, or how are you maintaining altitude is probably a better way to look at it. So a list of considerations that could be provided, which includes the terms technique, smoothness, accuracy, judgment, procedures, knowledge, and flight management. All right, so pilot judgment is the mental process of recognizing and analyzing all the pertinent and available information in a particular situation, a rational evaluation of the alternative actions in response to it, and a timely decision on which action to take. So in aviation, we could say that there's 3 judgment areas. There's the pilot, there's the aircraft, and the environment. All right. So there can be a lot of situations where, you may not have done the best course of action, but the judgment and the procedures and the way you found your way to making that decision, was still okay. Could have been better, but it was all right. All right. But technique is a big one. All right. So I use the up and down, straight and level one. I kind of liken that to a bowling alley, but in this case, it would be tipped on its side and you've got the gutter guards up. So if you're just bouncing off the gutter guards up, down, but staying within 100, 150 feet, then that's not good. What's the problem? There's a problem with the technique. Your straight and level technique is not good. All right. You're not flying smoothly and you're not being accurate. All right. You're not showing an understanding of why the airplane isn't maintaining height. All right. So you can see how all that's sort of folding in. So that's part of the process that you may well have sort of pulled it off in the end, but the way you found yourself there at the end of it all is what we would say, it's not really correct. It's not what we're looking for and an acceptable method, because you may have got away with it today, but it won't work for you tomorrow. All right. So when you're doing your flying and your flight training, these are the things you really want to watch. So straight and level, you want to be able to maintain the attitude, power, speed, trim. That's the technique used. And if you're doing that properly, you might go up and down a little bit. There might be some bumps, a bit of turbulence, or just a moment of inattention. You recognize it, you fix it, no worries. All right. It's not that the first time you bust 100 feet, you're done. All right. That's not what we're looking for. Remember, the flight test itself is never going to be your best performance ever. Okay. Just remember that. It's not going to be the best flight you've ever done. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be anxious. Once things get going, usually that settles down and you relax a bit. And that's our job to try and help you do that. And you just get on with it. All right. But initially it's going to be maybe a little bit wonky to start with. Okay. And we'll give you some time to settle in and do that. But eventually, we're going to have to make a call if things aren't going well. And sometimes it might just not be your day. So we'll come back another time. All right. So judgment, the FAA defines pilot judgment in terms of a pilot's skill repertoire, their knowledge and motivation to choose a suitable course of action. All right. So similarly, the FAA's definition of aeronautical decision-making includes both process and outcome components. Many aircraft accidents or investigations reveal that armed with good equipment, training and procedures and information, pilots still make bad decisions. So they were in a position to prevent the accident from happening, but for whatever reason, they did not. And this forms a very big part of what we're looking for. You've got to remember that we are looking for you not to give your bestest effort ever, but to show and demonstrate to us as examiners that you know what you're doing, you can do it safely, and you're going to make good decisions when we're not sitting next to you, all right, or your instructor. You're going to go out now with the very basics of learning and be given a license to go forth and prosper and go and learn. And this is something that we need to be really, really sure of. So when opportunities come, we will set up scenarios in the flight test that will force some of these decisions. Sometimes these come up just completely naturally with the airspace environment, the weather, the kind of traffic, or something that just happens with the airplane that may provide an opportunity for us to see how you're going to go about things as well. So really, really important part of the whole process. It's not just successfully getting from A to B to C to D and back again, or whatever kind of flight test you're doing, but the whole process of what it is that you use to do it. And that leads us into our non-technical skills as well. All right. So as you're working through the process, whether the outcomes due to impaired problem solving or bad judgment. All right. So a pilot who doesn't adequately consider the implications of a minimum equipment list on the aircraft performance could be potentially assessed as not demonstrating effective skills in the following non-technical skills, being NTS 1.3, 1.4, which is assess situations and make decisions and set priorities and manage tasks, and NTS 2.1, which is recognize and manage threats. All right, so sometimes there can be failure items or elements that are multiple that apply to one particular situation or environment. All right, so overall, these are some of the things that we're looking for to help you with that. And it's obviously far more in depth. We spend hours and days going through all this sort of stuff with examiners and instructors to help them understand what's all involved. And this is very crucial in the construction of a flight test. So when we have a test situation, we will give you the flight route or the purpose of it. Again, depending on the test, how much advance notice you may get from that, but you'll always get at least a day's notice now. And there's always a plan as to what we're going to do, when and where. Sometimes part of that plan is left up to you as to how you're going to attack it and how you're going to plan it. And a simple part of that would be like on a navigation exercise. I'm just going to tell you, potentially take me to this destination, but I'm not going to tell you how. It's up to you to navigate the airspace in or out. And again, these are all part of the variables that apply, a range of variables for all different locations, because not everyone starts in controlled airspace. You might have to fly through it midway. Sometimes you're starting there. Could be Class C, could be Class D, all these things. But that's all part of the scenario to see how you manage those elements as you go along. So when test day finally comes along, as I just said, there's going to be a flight route and everything that's going to be constructed for you, and you will be contacted by your examiner. They may be external to your flight school or a check and training organization. They could be internal. You could be like with me, you're doing your training with me, and obviously I'm then doing the test at the end of it all. So I'm swapping hats. But either way, you'll be informed of the conduct of the test, when it's going to be, the time to meet, where you're going to go, the details on the flight plan. Again, not necessarily every nook and cranny, but enough for you to plan and do what you have to do. What is provided on the day. So you need to bring your weight and balance, takeoff landing charts, various manuals, guides, books, whatever else you need to support the test activity, and the rough flow of how things are going to go. All right. Including you might need to notify for airwork, you might need to book a slot for something. So that'll all be discussed with you as and when the test approaches and relevant to your location. All right. As we show up on the day, we'll usually then, introduce ourselves if we don't already know each other, say g'day, and just have a bit of a general chat and make sure that you're in a good space and ready to start the test. As applicable, there'll be a bunch of documentation checks. So check your license and medical if you've already got one. If not, then all the paperwork for your flight training records and that sort of thing, ASICs, medicals, all the bits and pieces that need to be going on. Again, the flight examiner handbook will give you a bit of an idea if you really want to know what we're looking at, but you should know because your instructor and all that would have been preparing all this with you. All right. Once that's all done, documentation, then we basically go into the ground component and what the questions are for that particular test. So this is all on the flight test form. You should get the flight test form prior to the test. Your instructor should have already given that to you so you can have a bit of a look at it. Again, there's not meant to be any secrets as to the content of the questions or the topics that we're going to be asking. It's all right there on the flight test form. Where people do go wrong a little bit, though, is I guess how they prepare for the assessments or the questions and the format that they come. Now, like I said, there's no trick questions, but we don't just ask straight up, can you please recite the 5 reasons you might do a missed approach, for example, in an instrument rating test, or for an RPL test, we might ask. It's not just going to be black and white regurgitation of what the ARP says. It's going to be a scenario or a scenario-based question. So we're going to be asking you questions that apply the knowledge to our daily flying activities, because that's essentially what we're doing. It's not just a theoretical thing. It needs to be practical. We're not in the classroom answering exam questions anymore. Now we're doing the real thing. So I will ask questions about situations you could expect to come across on your flight in the style of flying that you're doing. So if you're an RPL, PPL holder, we might be asking something that you're flying along and the low voltage or alternator light illuminates. And what does this mean? And what are going to be your actions? And this will give us a really good insight into what it is that you're going to do, how you're going to attack it, your understanding of the severity of the situation, whether it's important that you get on the ground quickly or not, and allow us to have a bit of a chat with you about that. And when we're doing it, if you're a little bit short and not giving the detail, then this is where we can sort of use the Socratic questioning method, where we ask for clarification. We might say, well, why do you say that? Can you explain it a little bit further? And go, it might be, is this always the case that this is the situation? Why do you say that? Why we want to understand that you actually know what you're talking about and not just giving an answer that you might have read out of a cheat sheet or out of your preparation as well. So you've got good depth of knowledge and understanding of the whole situation as well. All right. So hopefully that sort of helps with all that. The questioning, it might not necessarily follow the test form. Sometimes it makes sense to ask it in a different way, but that is what to expect. So make sure you practice some of those sort of things. Again, it's not to trick you up or anything. It's just very practical based thing. You're asking for a license. And so you should be able to sort of deal with the kind of things that you're likely to come across in the use of that license or rating. So next up, it's up for the pre-flight briefing. So we're going to take you through the scenario, what to expect, the flight route or where we're going to go and perform the various functions of things throughout the flight. We'll establish with you who the pilot in command is, and that's obviously going to be the flight examiner, but we want you to be acting as the pilot in command and making all the decisions as far as the flight goes. We'll talk about transfer of control, who's flying when and when, as the various phases of the flight, and if anything happens or emergency procedures, who's actually going to be flying the airplane. We'll take you through the flight tolerances, make sure you're happy with those out of Schedule 8. The emergency procedures, any calls or anything else, checklists, and how we want you to perform those so you don't have to worry about anything. The biggest thing is that sometimes, people think, oh, yeah, it's a flight examiner, so I've got to do everything this way or that way. We don't want you to be changing what you're doing. You should be able to fly the same way you were with your instructor and doing everything. Remember, one thing I do see quite often is people sort of saying, oh, I'm just going to do this or just do that. Remember, we're pilots too. We can watch and see what's happening. We know when you should be doing something and when we expect you to do it. So we're aware of the phase of flight and what happens. We don't need to explain what and why you're doing something. If we do want to know, we will certainly ask. But yeah, don't try and turn yourself into a pretzel and change the way you're doing things to try and placate us. We'll be more than capable of following through the checklist and where you're up to with things, and we can see that something's going on and you're potentially delaying something and do that. And again, that's totally up to you is how you want to do it. The big thing is, remember, as an instructor, we can sort of chip in and help you out and prompt you and guide you, but as an examiner, the biggest difference is we can't do that. We're not meant to be doing anything that's going to impact on your decision-making or the process. So a good example is maybe on a PPL test day where it's raining outside or the weather's a bit bad and you'll be going, well, what do you think? I said, well, I can't tell you. I know what I think and I know whether I would go or not, but that's not for me to decide. It's up to you to decide. That's part of the process of you demonstrating that good decision-making. All right. So then the flight will take place. Like I said, the biggest thing is just to take your time. We're not looking for everything to be done massively efficiently. However, there are certain tests where things do need to be done in a timely manner, and commercial flight tests are certainly one of those where we would expect you to be more efficient in the way you handle things and do things a little bit quicker than, say, a private test. All right. But again, the standard should have been set in the flight training. And that's the big thing there, that if your instructors are doing their job properly and your pre-test is all been done properly, you should have a very good idea of what it's like. And look, to be honest, the hardest part usually is all the training leading up to the test. It's far more thorough. The flight test itself, we're not looking at absolutely every single element. It's a summary. an abbreviation assessment of nitpicking of different bits and pieces of the training syllabus. So honestly, the hardest work is done. Now, once the flight's complete, we'll usually either congratulate you and talk about it at the airplane. Sometimes we decide to go inside and do that. So don't take the fact that the examiner hasn't said that to you and taking your side that it's a fail. All right. Sometimes I just want to go through things with you and have a bit of a chat about it all and clarify things or whatever else. There are times where sometimes it can be very, very difficult to make that decision. And sometimes it does require a little bit of a chat. And then we can understand why something might have happened. Again, talking about all the elements that we discussed earlier to get your thought process and why you did things and how you answer could, really be the difference there is to convince us that, yes, what happened is okay or not. All right. So don't take that as a worry, but the flight test will be done quickly and the debrief will be done quickly as possible after the aircraft has returned back. Sometimes we might bring in an instructor or the head of operations or something else again, so they can be part of the debrief process. Again, if that happens, don't take that as a sign that things are bad. It's just so they can also learn and get feedback. Part of the process after the flight test, especially for flight schools, is that we're required to give feedback to the head of operations. So anything that we're seeing that maybe, they might want to consider focusing a bit more attention on, maybe, especially if we're an examiner and we've been to that school for a while and we're seeing similar things in students, this is a way we can feed back to the head of operations that certain elements of the syllabus may not be as thorough and being done as well as they could be. And also, conversely, pass on elements that have been just fantastic and things that we're seeing that are exactly what we're looking for as well, and keep it up. Don't stop doing it. So that's all definitely part of it. All right. So time to talk about the elephant in the room now. And that is a flight test fail. What happens? So remember, we've got 28 days to complete a flight test. So if something doesn't go according to plan in the flight component, then we need to come back and do it again. But let's talk about a fail in the ground component. And yes, it can happen. So if we have a failure in a ground component, then essentially we need to do it again. There's obviously deficiencies in knowledge and all that. So we will send you back to your instructor or for further training, research study, depending on if it's a proficiency check or a flight test, and go away and have another go at that. Once you do that, you'll come back. Hopefully then you've got it all under control and you pass, and then we can go on to the flight component. All right. But you can fail a ground component. Remember, if we have to be asking you questions all the time and digging and probing and guiding you through every single answer, it shows that your knowledge is not up to speed. So make sure it is. Do the work, do the study, do some practice questions and ask your friends and for guidance and help and things that they got asked on their test as well. But remember, there's no such thing as just learning what the examiner says, typically speaking. There's always going to be a multitude of questions that can be asked, and we'll be able to tell if you're sort of memorizing questions and answers from other people that are doing it, especially in a big flight school environment. All right, we can usually pick that up pretty quickly. Now, if it's happened on a flight, remember we've got all the elements, the techniques, and the tolerances and all that. So there's kind of two types of fails, I guess. There's a really, really bad fail, like it's just not been your day, and we've made some really critical safety risk decisions and stuff. So those sort of fails will usually be immediate. We will let you know at the time, and it'll be time to come back to the airport. Now, usually speaking, again, we'll try to deal with the individual as best we can. It's disappointing. You're just going to feel terrible. You probably were well aware of what happened and at the time, and you're just devastated, all right? But we'll get you back home. We'll have a chat about it. Remember, even if this is a negative outcome as far as a fail, it can still be a positive experience. Learning never ends in aviation. So take the moment, learn from the experience, and use it for next time and do better. And you usually will next flight. It'll go great and you'll get it all done. You've got 28 days to do that. elements where maybe it's like a steep turn or something like that, you just messed up, we may or may not tell you about it at the time. If it's all good that we can sort of continue bits with the test and get other elements done and completed, then we will do so, so that we're not wasted everything. And then it's just the things that we need to brush up and finish up on afterwards. We can do at another time. Now, not always will we require you to go and do remedial training, all right? So sometimes it could just be an absolute mistake. You just stuffed it up. You know what happened. You know why. You know what you're supposed to do. Remedial training is not required. Other times it just could be that, and your training record may well reveal this as well, that you've just been struggling with it a lot and just couldn't pull it together on the day. So we need to go and do some more of that. So you've got 28 days in which to finish that and get it done and get back to the examiner and finish it. All right. So flight test fails, not good. No one loves it. But again, we will work with you and your instructor in your school or whatever the scenario is to help get that through. All right. So hopefully there's lots of good tips there and advice to help you understand the flight test situation, what's going to happen, how it all works, what we're looking for as examiners. And again, remember, we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for safety. The good old question of would I let you fly my family? It's very valid and it's a good way to sort of approach it, that if you don't think you would want to be flying with yourself, then why would you expect someone else to? You are asking an examiner for a big thing, the privilege of that license or rating that you're seeking. And it is a big deal. There's a lot of responsibility on us to issue you that, and essentially putting our careers on the line every time we do. Right. Okay, guys, thank you so much. If there is any noise in the background, it's the rain. I have stopped this podcast probably 30 times now. We've got the monsoon. It's not like the fullest monsoon, but it certainly is tonight. Squally winds, the frogs are going and everything. So if there's noise in the background, I've done my best to edit it out, but I do apologize for that. Thank you for listening. Like I said, every time you guys listen and touch base and message me, it just means the world. So keep doing that. Love running into you in the shopping centres and everything else up here in Darwin. And I know a lot of you are starting to head back up this way and looking for work across WA&T and Queensland. If you are going to do that, I do strongly recommend you have a listen to some back episodes that I have put in. Some of those are all about the job hunting and searching for work in the top end. Episode 87, I think it is. I'm just trying to find my links here. Where to go through interview processes and all that. Really, really important that you get yourself educated and be as prepared as you can. It's just showing up unprepared is hands down a guaranteed way to blow any opportunity you get, right? So episode 87, planning for a career in aviation, that's part 2 of that one. Part 1 is structuring your flight training. Part 3 is all about the pilot award, how the pay structure works. And part 4 is for later on, once you've already got a job and looking to upskill and progress either within the organisation or maybe looking externally for opportunities. That is something you want to do as well. Remember, there is now 110 episodes there. There's a heap of information. Get stuck into it. Go through it. Share it with your friends. Make sure they've got all the good answers and the good guff as well. And if you are loving what you're hearing, remember Patreon is there. There's a subscriber platform where you can get quick and direct access to me. There's 3 levels of peer support, and I would love to have you on there. So patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. Jump on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed, get on there. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm there. One other thing, a lot of you sometimes add me on my personal Facebook page. Not a problem, don't mind doing that, but I don't really put a whole lot of aviation stuff on there. It's kind of all other things I do, but if you want to follow me, that's fine. But jump on the Trent Robinson Aviation Facebook page. That's the one that has all the aviation tips, what's going on and everything else there, which is sort of mimicked through the Facebook page and Instagram. All right, guys, take it easy. Stay safe. If you're up here in the top half of Australia, Queensland and abroad, be careful on the weather. And until next time, blue skies, remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.